Hi and welcome. You're about to find out what data protection means to you as a Tele2 employee, business partner or customer. As we're surrounded by data, you might wonder what we mean by protecting it. Which data should be protected, from what, and why? Well, first of all, because in Europe, data protection is a human right. Obviously, as a business that can't operate without personal data, Tele2 has a massive legal obligation. And for Tele2 to fulfill this obligation, you need to do the right thing every working day.
Looking back, data protection has been a priority in Europe since the mid-90s. Sanctions have been pretty soft, but now that's changing. New strict laws will harmonise data protection across all EU countries. And there are severe sanctions to enforce it, like being fined 4% of annual turnover. So, €100 million. And more importantly, it could cost us the trust we've built up. So, what have we got to do to protect people's data? What is expected of us? And what counts as personal data? Actually, it's all data that, alone or combined with other data, can lead to the identification of a living person. It can be in any format, such as sound, video, pictures, text, structured or unstructured, and even identifiers and encrypted data count. For a Tele2 customer and employee, this could mean names, addresses, personal numbers, social security numbers, ID card number, telephone numbers, internal customer numbers or identifiers, photos, videos, sound, cookie identifiers, IP addresses, email addresses, credit rating data, payment profiles, billing account IDs, behavioral data, device IDs like IMSI or ICCID numbers. Of course, some data is more regulated and comes with stricter demands. Here are 3 examples of those types of data. The personal data of employees often comes with local differences of a legal nature. Employee data might also include so-called sensitive personal data, such as health data or trade union membership. Electronic communication data can also be personal data. Call data records, CDRs, visited IPs or URLs, call times, etc., all demand that we have customer consent for any commercial use beyond providing the service, and that the data is deleted as soon as possible. The same goes for so-called location data. If it relates to the geographic position of an end-user's device, or in some way leads to an individual's identification, it is personal data.
So, things like cell ID, approximate location of Wi-Fi routers, GPS, or other positioning data?
Not quite. It's only personal data if it can be used in some way to help identify the individual. If it's been anonymized sufficiently, it no longer counts as personal data.
And why are we telling you all this? Because to provide good services, we have to process personal data. And to make sure this is done in a lawful and secure way, you need to know what processing of personal data means and how to do it securely. Processing personal data includes just about anything you can do with it, manually or automatically. Collecting, recording, organizing, storing, changing, retrieving, disclosing, sending, destroying, transferring. Yup, even taking a quick look at. One of the fundamentals is that you'd better have a good reason. The key here is having a legitimate purpose. So, before you do anything with personal data, make sure you know the reason.
It could just be that we need it to provide our service to the customer. Or maybe the customer consents to us using their traffic data to provide them with the best offers, or because we have a legal obligation. Luckily, there are a few data protection principles to guide you when processing personal data. The first and most obvious one is it must be done in a way that is lawful, fair, and transparent. There should be no nasty surprises. The second one is purpose limitation. The personal data must be collected for a specified, explicit, and legitimate purpose, and not used for anything else. Then there's the data minimization principle. This stipulates the adequacy and necessity of the data, reminding us to collect and store as little personal data as necessary for the intended purpose. The accuracy of personal data is another, which means keeping it up to date. Storage limitation is the principle that says we can only keep personal data as long as necessary for the intended purpose. So be clear about your purpose for storing the data. It tells you when it should be deleted. Integrity and confidentiality is about ensuring the data is secure, so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, get lost or damaged. On top of these, we have the new principle of accountability. This means that Tele2 is responsible to demonstrate compliance in all aspects at any point in time. By now, your head should be popping with questions. Am I processing personal data? Do I actually need it? Do I have a legitimate purpose to use the personal data? You can answer these questions using legitimate purpose and the data protection principles. But don't worry, you're not on your own.
Tele2 continuously work on organizational and technical measures to improve the protection of personal data and to guide you, such as policies, standards, and processes. But of course, these aren't enough. For Tele2 to do the right thing with personal data, you, our employees and business partners, have to do the right thing too. Not once a month, but every working day.
And thinking about the individuals whose data we handle, there are some individual rights, such as the right to explicit and accessible information before we collect personal data, the right to have data corrected, complemented, or erased, the right to receive a copy of the data we hold on them, the right to object to their data being processed further, and it's our responsibility to bring this to their attention. And when they ask us to act upon their rights, we must do so without undue delay. Are you wondering how your job will be affected by all of this? If you work in product management, you'll need to consider data protection for your strategies and tactics, not least when developing new products or services. When marketing our services, you should consider profiling carefully. So make sure that any trend analysis on the individual's preferences or behaviour is done fairly and with their consent where necessary. Pay special attention if it relates to children, traffic, or location data. Selling through every channel, you need to be informative and open with the individual while collecting their personal data. If you work with network or IT, you likely have access to personal data. You have the responsibility to ensure compliance to policies and standards. Say you work with customer support, then you handle customers and their personal data every day. Here it's important that we keep confidentiality and integrity at all times. Use your own username and password and treat any individual right requests with respect. Human resources is an area full of personal data about our employees. You have access to employment contracts, salary information, and particularly sensitive data. And then there are often national requirements to consider. And the procurement team. Choose your suppliers carefully. Find out if they handle our personal data. If so, put a data processing agreement in place. And Tele2 business partners. If you're entrusted with handling personal data on our behalf, handle it with care and according to agreement instructions. As you see, this is nothing that can be delegated to others. It's something that all of us has to take into account in our daily work. The good news is that this will get easier if we build it into every relevant aspect of our work. This is called privacy by design. Applying necessary integrity measures for personal data when developing new products, services, processes, and technologies. By doing this, we build in the default mechanisms to secure that we always handle personal data in a legitimate and compliant way. This is what's known as privacy by default. And remember that you shall be able to demonstrate compliance at any time. But one of the bigger changes is that we need to be able to show how we comply with data protection law. This means that everyone has to take responsibility so that we clearly document how we process which data to be able to demonstrate compliance at any time.
Does this mean we expect everyone to do everything perfectly all the time? Well, yes, but let's face it, we're only human. However, it's crucial that any errors in processing personal data are immediately reported internally. Employees, make sure you know your local process for reporting data breaches. Business partners, follow the routine stipulated in your contract with Tele2 or contact your Tele2 representative. Firstly, all of this allows us to mitigate the risks. Secondly, Tele2 also has an obligation to immediately report any breach to the relevant authority. Apart from the high penalties for not complying with regulations, we can't afford a loss of trust for the Tele2 brand. Ultimately, data protection comes down to one thing: trust.
Tele2 customers and employees trust us to handle their data in the right way. And Tele2 trusts you, employee or business partner, to respect our policies and follow the laws. Because we trust you, we give you the freedom to decide whether or not you have what you need to take your responsibility. If you're not sure how to handle personal data in your work, we expect you to take action, to read the relevant documentation, assess privacy risks, or ask us where to find what you need to know. You can turn to your legal department or your local data protection officer, and if they can't help you, you can turn to our group privacy officer. Thanks for watching.